My name is Rashida Din. I'm National Junior Vice President for the NESUWT, the Teachers Union. And for this session, we have Jay McKenna from the TUC talking about being young and active in the TU movement. Okay. Jay McKenna, quick bio for him, is the TUC Young Workers Forum Officer and the Northwest Regional Secretary. Jay is the Young Workers Forum Officer responsible for the meetings of the forum and the Young Workers Conference held annually. At the end of the session, Jay will host a Q&A. And just can I briefly remind members again to complete the conference polling questions, which can be found on the app or the link in the chat box. Please take a few minutes to make sure your voice is heard on a key range of issues facing young members. So over to you, Jay, and welcome.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to come and talk. And unfortunately, not in person, as Rashida rightly points out, because one of our affiliated trade unions has taken industrial action today. The latest this week, and just to express solidarity with those. It's had a significant impact on us getting young workers together. Every time we've seemed to try and get the TUC's Young Workers Forum together, we've had a similar challenge in bringing people together because of the waves of industrial action we're seeing from our affiliated trade unions. I've got some slides that I will run through shortly to kind of act as a note. Obviously, we were going to be in person. I was going to set a bit of a challenge to those of you who are at the conference and taking part, to think about what we do as a trade union movement to address the issues, and then think about what you might do as young teachers, young trade union members in the NASUWT to contribute to that, what you're doing for your trade union, what you might be doing even in your workplaces, but what you're doing for the trade union movement. And to set out maybe, and before I go on to some of the challenges we face, which are no doubt shared by colleagues in the NASUWT and sister unions, there isn't a presentation that I'm going to give, or I don't think I will be able to give, that is the silver bullet to this. That is going to say, here's what we need to do to fix the challenges our movement face, or here's what we're going to do to try and help you win in workplaces, and here's what we're going to do to tackle the significant challenge we face as a wide and UK-wide, even international trade union movement, to bring more people into the movement, particularly younger workers and a more diverse membership and rep space. They are challenges that are shared, but like we do so often, come together as a collective to find solutions to problems in the workplace or to campaign for better pay. I'm confident, the TUC is confident, and I think our unions are confident that our collective endeavour can find some solutions to these challenges. So when I pose some of these issues and explain some of our structures to you and talk about some of the work that we've been doing as a TUC with affiliated trade unions, I'd like you to maybe have some questions in mind, and I know you're being asked in the chat if you've got questions for at the end. Have a think about what you can do if these things relate to you. They might not relate to you in the work you do now as a teacher, but they might through a previous job you've done. Think, did you do something about this? Is there something you can share? But importantly, you will have friends and family, loved ones who work in some of these sectors where these issues are more prevalent. So if we're talking about harassment at work, some of the examples that often come to mind are in retail, and some of the experiences we've got from young workers around their experiences working in private sector industries. That won't obviously affect many NASUWT members who are teachers, but it will affect friends and family you have. It may well affect people who will later come to work in your profession. And something we will touch upon in my presentation is kind of how people's lived experiences of work is acting as a bit of a drag on the labour market of what we should expect from good work. It's lowering our standards rather than what we would like to see as a trade union movement, which is that we lift all of the boats on a rising tide. Someone's pulled the plug out on labour standards and employment standards in this country, and we're seeing the effect of that now through low pay, job insecurity, but also people's expectations of what good work should be. And that's our challenge as a movement, to fix that. So I'm just going to share my screen now and give an overview of what the TUC Young Workers Forum is, what we do, how you can play a part in that, because that's really important. This isn't just me. I am not the TUC Young Workers myself. It is our trade unions. It is our young workers in affiliated trade unions, and it is and could and should be you. So Kim, who looks after this for the NASUWT, me and her have spoken a lot about why we engage and how we engage with young workers and how we can bring more people into the trade union movement and to the TUC Young Workers Forum. Because it can't and shouldn't just be replicating something we do elsewhere. And it can't and shouldn't just be a space where we bring people together and talk about only young worker issues. Because as we'll touch upon in this presentation, it won't take the full hour because some of this was going to be an interactive if we were in person, but it is a shared movement issue. Lots of the issues are the same for the movement. But I want to create a space where we use the TUC Young Workers Forum, where we use young worker, young member structures, young teacher structures in our affiliated trade unions. Not as a space where we put young people to teach them the good and the bad of the movement, not as a space where they stay until they age out, which sometimes happens, but a space that starts to develop them and bring them through into the wider trade union movement. Because when I speak to TUC colleagues, we talk about how we get more reps. We don't just talk about how we get more young worker reps in local branches or in regions or even inside unions nationally. We talk about needing to and wanting to get more young people active in trade unions. So that isn't just about being the young worker or young member or young teacher officer on your local branch or your committee structure. That's about being the branch secretary or the branch chair or the treasurer or somebody else, some other role you have. Because too often, and we'll talk about this, young people get pigeonholed. We need to make sure that across all of our equality structures, but in our wider trade union structures, young people are represented. Young Black people are represented. Young women, young LGBT plus workers are represented, because it can't just be that we have, and I know from speaking to TUC equality colleagues, they've got a Black workers structure, the race relation committees, that does really good work. You're going to hear from Kudsia, I think, this afternoon, or she was on the agenda. Kudsia leads on this work, and she's keen that we make sure in all of our equality structures there are young workers involved, representing those protected characteristics, but speaking up and bringing through that energy and vitality that we see amongst young workers. But there's challenges for us, things that aren't unique to the trade union movement, but challenges the trade union movement faces that maybe other political structures don't face in engaging younger people. So who are we? What is the TUC's Young Workers Forum? How do we exist? A few years back, there was a conversation and a discussion to deliberately call it a forum, so that it shouldn't and couldn't and wouldn't just be seen as another committee for people to go to, that it was to bring people together to discuss like a forum should, to think about what we do and to think about what's happening to young workers. Why? Because we know, and let's be honest, I get paid to do this. I'm very fortunate. As well as looking after the TUC Young Workers Conference, I am the regional secretary for the TUC in the Northwest, and I've worked with the TUC for 10 years. And I've been involved in some of our young workers stuff in and out. I'm very fortunate. I get paid to do this very well, I must say. And I get to represent workers across the Northwest, but young workers nationally as well. And I go to some committee meetings and find them boring sometimes. I go to some of them and think this isn't the most exciting of things. And I want our forum, and I think we've maybe reimagined some of this in the last few years because of COVID, but I think good branches and committees do this, to be a space where we bring forward the issues of the day affecting young workers. Now, that isn't straightforward. That change is bound by our structures of our trade unions and of the TUC itself. And this sets out some of them. But I don't want people to look at this and think, this is bureaucracy. It isn't. I see this as opportunity to have the voice of young workers heard. And I want NASUWT young members to be a part of that voice with the TUC. So nationally, the TUC has a general council that directs our work, that tells me as the regional secretary and as the young workers officer, ultimately what I need to do. Policy is set at TUC Congress every September, although it was a bit later this year owing to the death of the Queen. But that takes forward the work of the TUC and is made up by general secretaries and senior officials of our union. So Dr. Patrick Roach, your general secretary, will sit on that alongside fellow education unions and all of the TUC affiliates, of which there are 48. Young workers have a seat on the General Council. The trade unions nationally decide that, but Charlie Gray, who's a GMB member, a young member, represents young workers on the General Council. Doesn't just represent the forum and the TUC Young Workers Forum, but represents what young workers are saying and doing, make sure their voice is heard at the top level, at the decision-making level of the TUC. We our policy setting, although not policy setting for the TUC, but kind of our policy setting arena for young workers in the TUC is at our Young Workers Conference. If you haven't seen the email or the details of this just yet, it's taking place on Saturday the 1st and Sunday the 2nd of April, 2023. It'd be really, really good to get young workers from NASUWT at that conference, and I'll touch upon why in a second. But maybe an encouragement might be, and please take this in the spirit intended, I'm a TUC official, and I know this happens with unions, where there are multiple unions in one sector. Other education unions are often represented at that, including the National Education Union. And I want to make sure all of our education unions are heard in that. Now, that isn't just to talk about the issues specific to your sector or to your workplace. It is like at TUC Congress, an opportunity to bring motions that matter to your young members or to your union to that conference, with the potential, as I'll touch on later, to go to Congress to become the motion from the Young Workers Conference. But it is a chance to have a space and a discussion. And last year was the first in-person one in a couple of years. And I was heartened to see a full room in the General Council chamber of the TUC in London. But unions who haven't previously been represented, some of our smaller affiliates, very specific health unions, having members there, coming along and taking part in the discussion. It isn't a two-day conference in the traditional sense of motions, because similar to what I said before about committees, that wouldn't be the most engaging and it wouldn't be the most use of our time. But it is a chance for us to come together and discuss. So on the Saturday, we use this as a much more open plan and an open event for people to come and take part. There are workshops, often fringe events, and panel discussions. Last year, we had panel discussions on how we reach out to young workers and organise young workers. Naomi Paul, who was just at that time recently elected as the new General Secretary of the Musicians Union, Carl Roper, who leads on organising and education for the TUC, colleagues from the Scottish Trade Union Congress, who've been working on their Better Than Zero campaign, coming and talking about how we campaign and organise with young workers. A panel discussion with Paul Fleming from Equity and other trade unionists about the issues facing young people around pay, because the issues affecting workers, in some cases, more acutely affect young workers. And I'll touch on this when it comes to policy work, but we know pay is a big issue for that, as is job insecurity because of where people work. That conference on the Saturday, as I say, is all of those kind of open events. And then on the Sunday, we do our motions, and unions are entitled to motions. And I would like to see on the agenda next year, motions from the NASUWT being moved by members, young members from NASUWT, with young people answering to, responding to, and maybe even critiquing the motions of other unions in that environment, because that healthy debate is good for us to shape how we respond to the challenges facing the trade union movement, but to young workers specifically. Registrations are out for that at the moment. So if you think you'd be good for it, but not just yourself, don't just think about yourself in this, or you'd like to do it, or, you know, one of the challenges I think the movement and young workers particularly face is that the people who get active are all maybe those who already hold a branch position, maybe a position in their region or even in the nation for the union, and then get involved in other political activities. Because let's be honest, many of us as trade unionists are involved in other community, political campaign and work outside of our day job. How do we get new people involved? How do we maybe see this as a development opportunity for new people? Kim's got the details for that, but I'm more than happy to have a conversation with anybody who's interested. Please do. My email, I'll share at the end. I'll make sure it's put into the chat, but do get in touch if anyone's got any questions or comments about that. There is then a Young Workers Forum that comes from that, that's elected and appointed at that conference, with a chair and a vice chair that the conference elects. And that membership is made up of all of our unions. So unions over a certain size nationally get designated seats, of which NASUWT would be one. And it'd be good to have someone representing NASUWT on that forum. And smaller unions get to take part. And it's similar to what I said before about, you know, how this intersects with other protected characteristics. We have reserved seats for Black young workers, young women, young LGBT plus workers, and young disabled workers, where unions can make additional nominations to those. And it would be good to get more people involved. We've got, I think, 7 of those 8 seats filled at the moment. That's really important. But if people want to maybe do the same on our other equality fora, whether that be on the Race Relations Committee, the TUC Women's Committee, there are spaces for young people on those committees as well. And I think it'd be really good to have people playing an active part in all of those, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions. November is Young Workers Month. Not everybody knows that. And I think even some of our trade union affiliates sometimes have not been able to do as much on that, partly because there is a challenge, partly because we're in the last couple of years, we've been doing lots of this from home like we are today, but partly because this year, any plans that any of us had probably very quickly went out the window as we started to either begin to ballot our members, as I know NASUWT are now, or taking industrial action as many are, or planning for those ballots to come, because our unions have taken part in a wave of industrial action and more to come in the near future, and that keeps us very busy. So these things aren't as important when we're fighting on these fronts, because those fights are not just a fight for the movement, they're fights for young workers, for the future of our professions as well. But we also get to set policy via this conference and via our Young Workers Forum. At the conference, we vote on all of the motions and whether they pass or fall, as you would at a traditional conference, and then they come to the forum to think about what our work might be. But one of those motions, the one with the most votes, goes to Congress as the motion from the TUC Young Workers Conference. Now, that isn't just a little pat on the head for young workers to say, aren't you heard or your voices considered? They set the policy and set the work of the TUC as well. So the motion at Congress earlier this year was about mental health, and we'll be looking about how we take that forward to support young workers' mental health particularly. But in previous years, we had a really substantial motion about organising young workers. In the 150th anniversary of the TUC in 2018, a motion about how we organise young workers, and that drove forward lots of policy work for the TUC that I'll touch on shortly. But now influences what we do, how we organise young workers. Because as I set out at the beginning, there isn't a silver bullet. I wish I could sit here, and I'm sure any trade unionist wishes they could sit here and say, if we just do these 3 or 4 things, we can organise more young people into our trade unions. We can't. It isn't that simple, but we know what the challenges are, and I'll touch on them shortly. And our policy work is aimed at trying to support those. So what are the issues for young workers? What are the challenges we know? At that conference, we also vote on some priority campaigns. We take the motions from the conference, and that's why it's important to have NASUWT as well as all of our affiliates playing an active part, because you influence the campaign work that we will do as a Young Workers Forum then. We vote on what are the priority campaign areas. It used to be that organising young workers was one of the 2 priority campaigns we had. Last year, we decided not to have it as one of the 2 priority campaigns, and that should just be our mission anyway, because it should be our mission. If we're not organising people into trade unions and organising them to becoming reps and using that power we have to win, then I think we've forgotten, and I don't think we have, but I think people would have forgotten what we're here for. That's our mission on a daily basis, to do those things. So what are the issues that come up recently? Paying cost of living and mental health. And we've got a story, for example, on this that relates back to that policy work coming up in a few days' time about how the TUCs ask and our affiliates ask for a £15 an hour minimum wage would benefit young workers in particular. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of young people who would benefit from an increased minimum wage up to £15 an hour. Now, that's key as well, because you will know through jobs you've maybe had or jobs friends and family have got, young people get paid less because of the jobs they do. Not just because of the minimum wage. I refuse to call it the government's national living wage because it isn't a living wage, but not because of the minimum wage, because young people under 23 get different rates. So they might have the same responsibilities, might be married, own a home, renting a property. Their rent isn't discounted according to their age. Their mortgage isn't discounted. The Bank of England aren't telling them they get a lower interest rate because they're only 21 or 22. But their wages are lower or can be lower. And we're saying that that £15 an hour minimum wage should apply to everybody, regardless of age, because the jobs you do should be paid for the work you do, not the age you are when you're doing them. Mental health is an issue we know, and particularly our education unions. Big credit to NASUWT, NEU and others who over the years have raised this. Mental health of young workers is significant, and it's exacerbated or worsened, or in some cases caused by work, often by workload, often by bad bosses, and often by the practices they face. They don't come to work and are able to sometimes, as some people are in good jobs, able to maybe forget about the challenges they face at home or the financial worries. They're made worse at work because of their bosses or the expectations or the workload, or in your case, all of those things, and the pay you receive on top for doing that. That doesn't offer you kind of a way out and adds to the struggles that people face. We also know there are significant issues, and I'll talk about some of these in a second, around harassment of young workers. People at work, sorry, I've minimised my screen slightly there. Young workers who are facing big challenges in how they're treated at work. And we know through our sexual harassment work that we've done as a TUC, we know young women particularly have faced significant issues around sexual harassment. And one of the successes of the movement is we've got government to act on third-party harassment, where people are harassed or abused and discriminated against by third parties, often sometimes seen as an issue in retail, for example, where people are abused by customers. But I am sure teachers would experience this via parents or by other people in the general public and the abuse they receive for the job they do or the decisions they're making at work. That's a big issue, we know. And let's be honest, because I know it, I've worked in retail. I've never been a teacher, but I've got friends. My best mate's an assistant head in a school. My sister-in-law's a teacher. My mum's a teaching assistant. I understand relatively, without having done the job, the challenges the sector faces. But I know of the examples where parents and others have been abusive to them, where people have given them unnecessary criticism, where they've been essentially bullied by parents, or colleagues of theirs have been bullied by parents, and that harassment has to stop. The quality of work is the big issue. Not just about job security and insecure work, but the kind of jobs people are given to do, what work looks and feels like on a daily basis, because that negative experience of work, as I said before, has a pull on people's expectations of what work should be like. And job security is a big thing. Too often we're seeing across all sectors, no longer is this just a conversation about what work should look like in the kind of the private sector or the gig economy. But in education, I was with UCU yesterday, faced big issues around casualisation, and I'm sure that's no doubt different in NASUWT and NEU with their members, where there are instances where staff are on casualised contract or there is worries about job security. And then the issues are the future. What does the future hold for young workers? But those issues are the same for the trade union movement. And it's our job as the TUC Young Workers Forum to do two things. One, to support our movement-wide response to these issues, pay and cost of living, mental health, harassment, quality of work, job security. They affect everybody in the trade union movement. But it's our job, and this comes back to my challenge I set out at the beginning, for young NASUWT members to play an active part. It's our job to make sure the voices of young workers are heard in that, and the work of the TUC. And it's our job, well, it's your job in this case, to make sure NASUWT's voices are heard in this structure as well, to make sure that happens. Because I know NASUWT play a very active part nationally in the TUC at the General Council. In our regions, we have a really good relationship with them in the Northwest. And we need and want that voice to be part of the work we'll do as TUC Young Workers, to make sure we have a wide range of voices shaping what we do to find the solutions to these problems that we face. But there are other issues that affect young workers and affect the trade union movement. And that's the membership of trade unions for young people. It's how we get more young reps in our trade union movement, and it's winning for young workers and the trade union movement. Now, there's some bits, and we'll come back to those in a minute, because I'm kind of keen to, and I'll set this challenge as I touch on some of those policy areas and just kind of give you some, I think, important stats to think about. How do we organise young workers? How do we get young people to become members of our unions? And I think this is important to say. I don't just mean how you might encourage people to become NASUWT members or members of trade unions in the education sector. I mean, how can we, as a collective, support the organising efforts of other trade unions? How can young workers in NASUWT and NEU be out supporting the work of Unite in the private sector, trying to organise people in Amazon, for example, or GMB organising in Amazon, or other people were organising in retail? How do we do that? How do we collectively do that? Because as I set out before, as a young member, you will have friends and family, or as any trade union member, you might have children or partners who are working in these sectors that are not unionised, or union strength isn't as good as it maybe is in the public sector. How do we collectively find some of these solutions? How do we share good practice? How do we share what maybe somebody's done in a branch level inside the NASUWT without, and I know there will be challenges, with unions that potentially are organising in the same sector or in others. How do we share that good practice? Because that is important to us all so that we grow and get stronger. What are the good campaigns we're doing? What are the ones that are engaging people that help us win? And ultimately, what about our wins? And the TUC nationally is doing a lot more of this with our work in the Solidarity Hub, telling these stories and sharing these best practices. But before I go to some questions, and hopefully there are going to be some, I just want to kind of give a highlight of a couple of things I think that are particularly important to us to think about in this. We've got to reach out to young workers, and there's a report and a link that I'll share in the chat shortly about how we've done some of this, about people's expectations of work. We've done stuff where people's experience of work shows that, you know, they feel stuck at the start. They feel challenges in getting trade unions to help them do some of this. But our biggest challenge is in organising young people to be part of our unions. It's getting them into unions, and it's getting them to become reps. When we think about trade union membership, less than 1 in 10 workers aged 16 to 24 are trade union members. And amongst trade union members themselves, so amongst all of our membership, of which there are around 6 million trade union members in the country, only 1 in 20 of those are aged 16 to 24. 40% of our current union members are aged 50 or older. So even though the government's putting up the retirement age at regular pace for many, a lot of our trade union members are going to retire in the next 10, 15, 20 years' time. They're going to be out of the door, and they might become retired members, but that has a significant impact on the trade union movement. Firstly, because we've got to feel sufficient. We've got to say we speak for a significant mass of people in the trade union movement to have this authentic voice to be on behalf of workers. But we also have to represent enough people that we are making a difference. Because if we're not, and we're not getting them to pay their membership dues and to be part of the trade union, what we will see is that we have to divert our resources into supporting our members elsewhere. Our money will run out, and our ability to do what we do well, which is to campaign and win, will be diminished. But that problem is also the same amongst our rep space as well. Not enough people are coming through as young workers and young members to become reps. And there is a significant challenge where around the same percentage of people, our rep space is aged over 45. I think the average age of a rep when we last checked was around 49, and that had gone up since we last checked around a decade ago. Our rep space on average is getting older. Young workers are important to replace those reps that will one day retire from the workplace, but also because organising people will join unions if they see and hear people like them represent them. So that's why we need to have young workers in trade union rep roles. We need to have black workers and women, those who are visually representative of the people that they want to represent. That's really important to us. Now, there are challenges to how we do some of this. Big issues that we know. Not necessarily a problem in teaching. You know, the sectors where we're low as a trade union movement, despite the good organising activity of some of our affiliates. You look in hospitality, a large number of young workers work in hospitality, but your trade union density is just 4%, much lower amongst young workers there. Similar in retail, trade union density, despite the work of our affiliated trade unions, is low in retail and distribution, but that's where a lot of young people tend to work. So we've got to increase the number of young workers. We've got to train more workplace reps. And the way we encourage people to become part of our unions, and I'll finish on this, is by seeing to be doing something for them and helping them. And a few years back, Catherine Mackridge, who used to look after the TUC Young Workers Forum, done some polling about it not being part of the job. And it was about young workers' experiences of third-party harassment and what some survey found and shows. And as someone who I think knew this was a challenge for us, even I was taken aback by this. Half of workers in 2018 experienced either bullying, sexual harassment, verbal abuse, physical assault, or a combination of these at work. And whilst that happens to people across all age ranges, as I said before, the issues that affect young workers are no different than the issues that affect the trade union movement. young workers were disproportionately more likely to be victim of these behaviours, partly because of the sectors they work in, as I said before, maybe in those kind of customer-facing roles, but partly because they're likely to be in junior positions in the workplace and a weak position in the labour market. Now, that, I'm sure, will resonate with young teachers who don't feel they've got the position, new into a kind of the job, new into a workplace, and are worried about speaking out and what that does. Likely to be overrepresented in public-facing jobs, teachers. And in a poll of over 4,500 workers, one third of 18 to 34-year-olds, so that whole age range of people at NASUWT was represented as young workers, had been subject to a form of harassment, abuse, or violence at work. And it was from a third party, so maybe those parents or those others we spoke about before. As well, in the same poll, we surveyed over 400 young workers to ask about what that experience, what it looked like if they reported it as well. Of the young workers who reported harassment, 3/4 told us nothing changed or the situation got worse. So going to your boss simply alone simply didn't change it. And that the third party harassment, 85% of young workers said they'd received verbal abuse from a third party, something, we could imagine even in your workplaces, but in wider workplaces where young people work. And young people are telling us these experiences. I'm not going to report all those figures. I'll share this report in the chat and with colleagues to send on. But that is where an example of, as a movement, we have to respond for young people to feel like trade unions can make a difference. Now, we've been successful in that. We've got the government to change the law. It's our job now to take that into workplaces, but it's our job to go to young workers, young members inside the NASUWT, in our affiliated trade unions, and outside of the trade union movement, and say, look, this is what we do. And this is what we've done. We heard there was an issue. We've recognised that we found solutions. We've got the government to change the law. And in workplaces, we're getting bosses to do the right thing to support people. We're making a difference at work. The mission of the TUC is to change the world of work for good. That's a deliberately play on words. We're here to change the world of work. We're here to do it for good, and which is both in quality and in longevity. It's for us to change work. Trade unions change what work looks like. And I think that's a challenge we sometimes face. And I'll finish on this point about the organising challenges we face. We are not like other political entities. We're not like the Labour Party. We're not like other political parties, the Green Party or the Conservative Party. We're not like wider social justice movements around climate or BLM, because we have a job of fixing problems that people face in work, as well as helping out on those wider social justice movements, as well as having a voice and a stake in those because they affect our members. It's for us to fix some of these, but the structural challenge we face on engaging young workers to get them to become members and reps, or that it maybe is a bit more, there's a cost to join them, unlike joining a demonstration on some of these other issues. There is a structure that sometimes people don't understand. And all too often, we're just not asking them. Not asking them in the workplaces where we've got trade union recognition and organisation. We're not asking them to become a rep, and we need to do a bit more of that. We're not asking them to become a member in some cases, but too often we're not in the places where they work, as I set out before, in retail or distribution or in hospitality, and certainly not to the scale that we want to be. And I think it's sometimes too easy for others to say to us, if we just copy what the Labour Party did under different leaders to engage young people, if we just copy what climate action groups are seeking to do, if we just copy what the BLM movement has done to kind of reach out to more people, it isn't that simple for us, but there are things we can learn from them about how they've done that. And that's engaging and campaigning and winning on issues that affect people. Now, I think trade unions, not just because it's my job, but I've been a rep. I've been a young rep at the age of 18, because I think we're best placed to do this. And if we don't do it in workplaces and in communities, who will? And all of those social justice organisations, all of them come back to us, don't they, to learn from our experiences, to ask for our resources. We've got the tools at our disposal. We've got people who are our members. As Francis O'Grady, our General Secretary until the end of this year, says, our trade union reps are our army. They are our generals, our officers. They are our people who go out there and make a difference in people's lives. Our members are that swell of the public that we use to give us voice, a legitimate voice on some of these things. We have staff like myself and others on this call who are paid by our unions or given time by our unions or our employers to do this work. We've got those assets. We've got money, not maybe not enough of it in some cases, but we've got money that can help us do this. We've got these tools and we've got all of our collective experiences and our endeavor to want to make a change on these things. Now it's about how we try and do it. That's what we want to do as a TUC Young Workers Forum. It's what we want to do as a TUC. And I'm sure it's what you, as young teachers, want to do. You want to shape your profession to be better. And I don't want, and I'll finish on this point, I don't want us to see these things in isolation or a silo. It's important we have young workers in trade unions. It's important we have young trade unionists as reps, and not just young worker reps, but playing an active part in our structures. So whether that's inside the NASUWT, in your branch, regionally or nationally, and ideally inside the TUC Young Workers Forum as well, giving your voice, using your experiences to shape what we do. And I think collectively we will find a solution to this. It won't happen overnight. Let's be honest. We're not going to turn up at the conference on the 1st and 2nd of April if some of you are able to come along and say we've fixed some of these things. But we'll see a movement that's determined, that is fighting back through the industrial action that we're seeing, but is going to find a way to win and fix these big issues, whether that's getting young people involved in trade unions or winning on the issues that affect young people. Collectively, we could do it. And I would really, and I'll finish on this, want NASUWT young teachers to play an active part in doing some of that.
Thank you so much, Jay. I mean, very insightful talk that you've done there. Our strength is that grassroots voice, isn't it? That the grassroots voice of that blood of our unions, which is that young voice. And it's interesting that you said about TUC Congress, because I spoke to your motion about young workers and mental health. So yeah, you know, I'm really pleased that I did. We have got a question for you. So here we go. Some young members believe that getting involved in the union is like a nail in the coffin for their career in schools. They believe that being a rep will stall their career progression. What more can we do to convince them that their career and activism go hand in hand?
That's a question that comes up a lot. That's something we see, and I don't think just amongst young workers. I think, you know, we could all probably imagine people we've asked to become a rep in workplaces at whatever age, who are worried about being the person that puts the head above the parapet. I think we've got to try and maybe tell a bit more of the good stories. I think there's lots of cases, as ever. We all know about our glorious defeats. We'll all know about the times we've had to go back to managers with our tail between our legs. And I'm sure we've then all heard the story of someone who become a rep. And we heard of those examples of people who've maybe been disciplined or, you know, wrongly sacked for trade union activity. That happens, but in very, very, very few circumstances. There are hundreds of thousands of trade union reps up and down the country in different workplaces, in workplaces where the employer is hostile or where the employer is favourable. And there are very few instances where that happens, where it stops them getting on. And I think we've got to tell the story about how being a trade unionist and what it does, what it actually is. And that's telling the story of our reps. And that's something we want to do via the solidarity of people coming together and speaking up for other people. I think there's something maybe a bit cynical in some of this, is that we need to be honest as well about the skills it brings. Being a trade union rep, I won't lie, when I worked in the passport office and the job centre, when I was 18, 19, 20, the experience I got through being a trade union rep, going into meetings with management, representing people, the issues I become aware of, helped me do my job. They taught me skills that I just didn't have. You know, as a young teacher, I'd imagine you're feeling confident speaking in front of a class of pupils, but you develop those skills much faster when you've got to go and speak amongst your peers, representing that in front of a trade union meeting. The negotiating skills you pick up, you know, it's an opportunity to further develop your skills. And that if you maybe want to progress inside your workplace into kind of senior leadership teams and others, you will pick up skills and experiences. And I think there's something positive to say about it, in that lots of our employers, lots of companies, lots of, you know, head teachers in schools, you know, local authorities or multi-academy trusts recognize the value of people being a trade union rep, because they give us time off. They give us facility time. They give us the resources to do this job. And I think it's showing, well, look, yes, there are sometimes a couple of people who use you being the trade union rep as a reason why they don't think you can get on. But all I'd say from my experience of this is we often last longer than those. that HR person in a multi-academy trust, or that head teacher that doesn't like the person who they think's been outspoken on an issue, you'd often find they don't stick around as long as the trade union rep does in a workplace, because lots of employers value what we do. We help them be a good place to work. We solve issues before they become issues. And even when we sometimes fall out, we often come back together because we recognise there's an important value for both of us and there's a role that we both need to do. So I think there are issues on this. I do think it's something we shouldn't shy away from. And in one of the reports I'll send, I think there's something to, in that talks about what people worry about being the person who speaks up. But I think there's a wealth of experience of people who've been our reps and trade union reps in previous years. And maybe there's something in getting them to mentor. Maybe where there is a case where someone says, or maybe you, and I think this is important for us to do, it's on all of us to find our successor. So if you're not a young person listening into this, or you've got, family members who are a trade union rep in another workplace, and they've done that job for 10, 15, 20 years, it's for them to find the successor. The trade union movement's existed for 150 odd years, and we want it to exist for another 150 odd. And the way we do that is by finding our own successors. And I think there's something in mentoring. So, that challenge we might face with a young worker now will have been the same back in the 70s and the 80s as well. Someone who doesn't want to put the head above the parapet. So if you're identifying someone you think, they'd be really good. They've got all of the skills, all of the attributes to be a really good workplace rep, but they're worried. Share with them your experience, what it's been like, good and bad. Ideally, share with them the good ones so they get involved and they get active. But let's use people to be mentors to help people through, because it is a daunting thing sometimes, not just because of worrying about your employer, but thinking you need to know everything. I remember when I was 18 and a new trade union rep, I wondered how our branch chair and branch secretary knew half of the things that they know. And it was time, and it was learning from them, and it was getting opportunities to learn from them through shadowing and other things like that. They mentored me, they supported me. And I'm very fortunate that I've gone on to work for the TUC and become a regional secretary. And I think more of our reps and activists can do some of that, sharing their experience to overcome those worries that people might have about becoming active. Because lots of us, I can name very few times I think I've been seated to a significant detriment by being the trade union rep. And there are many, many hundreds of thousands who've been trade union reps who could say the same. And we sometimes just hear those bad ones. So maybe that's something for us to do, share those good experiences of the people who have been trade union reps.
Absolutely. And also within our union, for example, we have the rep courses, rep 1, rep 2, and that's, CPD to support you in developing those skills and those experiences. And I know that the wider TUC also offer courses, etc. And it's great professional development, as you say.
Yeah, there's a whole range of trade unions, and maybe just something to add to it though as well, it's about how their activism can link to their career. Let's be honest, and it's a challenge, particularly I do think that's acute in education, not just because my best friend who I'm going out for a drink with tonight will want me to have said this, but your jobs, what you do in workplaces will look very different and feel very different if we don't change it for the better. So if we don't take a stand now to fight back and get decent pay, good terms and conditions, reducing frankly, I listen to the hours he does, the frankly absurd workload that people in the sector face, then I don't think we can say to ourselves that we need to worry about, what employers might do to us for being the trade union rep, because I can't imagine many of you, if any of you want to carry on to do it. So it's important that we stand up and take an act as the rep to value the profession. And I think that's one of the things in the current wave of industrial action. It isn't just about pay. What we're seeing in the health sector, in education, on the railways, in CW, in the Royal Mail, is people saying they're speaking up to protect what their job is. Not just about getting a pay rise, which is needed, but bosses wanting to change what they do, either through workload, through under-recruitment and kind of under-investment, or wanting to do away with good terms and conditions. They're going to significantly change what these jobs are. And if we don't take a stand on those things as reps and activists now, what we do as jobs will significantly change. So it's important we do that just to protect what we've got, let alone for all those reasons outlined before it can be good for an individual to become a rep.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Really useful session. And I know I've taken away lots of advice, and, get involved at the NUSUWT, get involved with the Young People's Forum at the TUC. That's what it's about, grassroots voice. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Please do complete the conference poll. There is a link in the chat, and we're to come back at 1 o'clock. So please use the Zoom link that's been provided in the programme. But thank you so much for attending, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Jay, especially.
Thanks very much.